Welcome back, everyone. I'm Jordan Giesige, and this is The Limiting Factor. If you've spent any time watching or reading the news in the past 10 years, you've probably seen headlines about electric vehicle fires, or even entire parking lots or cargo ships going up in flames due to electric vehicle fires. Because of that, a lot of people have come to the conclusion that electric vehicles are more likely to catch fire than internal combustion vehicles, or that when they do catch fire, the fire is more dangerous. So is that actually the case, or is this just another case of selective clickbait journalism? As you can probably guess, based on the title of the video, it's clickbait journalism. Electric vehicles are actually 8 times less likely to catch fire than an internal combustion vehicle. And although EV fires do burn hotter, they burn up their fuel more slowly because rather than storing their energy in a single large fuel tank, they store it in hundreds or thousands of battery cells packaged in flame-resistant material like steel, which are in turn divided by fire-resistant barriers and enclosed in fire-resistant housing. That means despite a higher core fire temperature, EV battery fires actually experience a lower peak heat release rate, which means that the risk of an EV fire spreading to surrounding vehicles and structures ends up being similar to an internal combustion vehicle. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Today, I'm going to back up my safety claim with several sources of fire data, research papers that have set vehicles on fire to measure heat flows, and real-world examples, because nothing quite hits home like anecdotal evidence. Along the way, I'll also explain why people's concerns about lithium-ion battery fires aren't unfounded, but simply directed at the wrong products. Before we begin, a special thanks to my Patreon supporters, YouTube members, and Twitter subscribers, as well as Rebellionaire.com. They specialize in helping investors manage concentrated positions. Rebellionaire can help with covered calls, risk management, and creating a money master plan from your financial first principles. Let's start by comparing the likelihood of an electric vehicle catching fire with internal combustion vehicles. I found 3 reliable data sources. First, the Swedish Civil Contingencies Agency reported that ICE vehicles were 20 times more likely to catch fire than electric vehicles. Second, EVs Are Safer out of Australia, which collects and reports data on EV fires globally, found that across all countries, ICE vehicles are 80 times more likely to catch fire than electric vehicles. Third, Tesla's reported that the average vehicle in the US is 8 times more likely to catch fire than a Tesla vehicle. That's surprising because you'd think that Tesla's data would be more biased in favor of EVs than government-funded work out of Sweden and Australia because Tesla sells EVs. But instead, their figures are the most conservative. That is, it's clear Tesla isn't trying to exaggerate the safety performance of their products or engage in fear-mongering about their competition. But it does raise the question of why Tesla's numbers are so much more conservative. I see 2 primary reasons. First, Tesla cites vehicles per billion miles traveled. That's as opposed to the other sources, which appear to both cite the number of vehicle fires as a proportion of the number of vehicles on the road. In my view, that skews the data in favor of EVs because they tend to be about a third of the age of the average vehicle on the road. And older vehicles are more likely to get into accidents and catch fire. Second, Tesla's data includes fire events that are unrelated to the vehicle itself, such as structure fires, wildfires, and arson. That's as opposed to the data for the U.S. average of all vehicles, which doesn't include data from sources like structure fires. There are a few other potential minor reasons why Tesla's data ended up being more conservative, but the key takeaway here is that even with assumptions that favor the internal combustion vehicle data, Tesla's vehicles are still 8 times less likely to catch fire. The only caveat I'd add here is that Tesla's data isn't perfectly representative of all EV batteries because Tesla has an above-average track record for battery reliability. That is, not all batteries are created equal. So if you're planning on buying an EV, it's always worth checking if that brand or vehicle has a history of recalls. With that said, given that Tesla dominates the US EV market, their data would still be strongly representative of US EV data as a whole. Next, let's take a look at the intensity of EV versus ICE vehicle fires. Many people point to the fact that EV fires burn hotter than gasoline or diesel fires as proof that EVs have worse fire safety. That's a false assumption. Why? Let's take a look. With an internal combustion vehicle, the fuel is all held in one large tank. When it ignites, it releases that energy quickly and at a temperature of around 800 degrees Celsius. With a lithium-ion battery, the fire temperature can be well over 2000 degrees Celsius. However, in an EV battery pack, the battery cells, which often have a steel jacket, are surrounded by insulative potting material and fire-resistant dividers that are used between groups of cells. All of that, in turn, is surrounded by a fire-resistant housing made of materials like steel. What that means is that when one or several battery cells ignite, it takes time for the fire to spread from cell to cell before engulfing the entire battery pack and the vehicle. The fire protection in an EV is so good that even if you deliberately light the passenger cabin on fire, the battery pack won't necessarily ignite. For example, last year, arsonists in Frankfurt, Germany tried to set 15 Teslas on fire. The fire did spread between vehicles, but the fire department was able to douse the blaze before the packs caught fire, and had the blaze under control within an hour. Let's move on from theory and anecdotes and take a look at a research paper by Arvidsson and Westland from the Research Institutes of Sweden titled Water Spray Fire Suppression Tests Comparing Gasoline-Fueled and Battery Electric Vehicles. As the title indicates, the researchers ignited both EV and ICE vehicles with a test setup that included a sprinkler system to help control the fires, as well as equipment to measure heat flows. That resulted in the graphs on screen. On the left is the internal combustion vehicle fire, and on the right is the battery electric vehicle fire. For the ICE vehicle, the fire almost immediately triggers the sprinkler system. Despite that, within a few minutes, the heat release rate hits 8,000 kilowatts. For the EV, it takes about 12 minutes for the battery pack to reach thermal runaway and trigger the sprinkler system. And the heat release rate never goes above 3,000 kilowatts. What this shows is that at its core, even though a battery fire may burn hotter than a gasoline-based fire, it burns through its fuel more slowly. Let's take a look at the implications of that. First, the total energy released from an EV fire is similar to that of an ICE vehicle fire. That means the risk of an electric vehicle fire spreading to other vehicles and structures is comparable to an internal combustion vehicle. So for every large-scale fire that you see on the news started by an EV, you can easily find another fire started by an ICE vehicle. For example, on the EV side, there was recently a fire at Rivian's factory that damaged 50 vehicles. However, last year at London Airport's parking garage, a diesel vehicle started a fire that destroyed 1,500 vehicles and the parking garage itself. The second implication of the thermal ramp and delayed onset of an EV battery fire is that passengers have time to exit the vehicle before it catches fire. The battery management system warns the driver if the battery pack is going into thermal runaway, and regulations stipulate that the passengers have at least 5 minutes between that warning, which occurs at the first cell failure, and the entire pack igniting. But 5 minutes is the minimum. EV manufacturers often push far beyond the regulatory requirements and aim to design battery packs that resist fully igniting for 1 hour or more. That's as opposed to fires that involve gasoline, which can lead to massive, rapidly igniting fireballs that can't be escaped. Besides the safety of passengers and surrounding structures and vehicles, how do EV fires impact first responders and bystanders? First, lithium-ion batteries contain all the ingredients necessary to sustain a fire. That means they're more difficult to extinguish and also carry a much greater risk of reignition hours or even days after the initial blaze. But as long as first responders are trained to deal with those factors, they're manageable. For example, a fire blanket can be used to help smother the fire. Then a directed water jet can be used to penetrate and cool the battery pack. After a few hours when it's cooled, the EV can be placed in a container filled with sand to prevent reignition. Second, in terms of toxic fumes, interestingly, regardless of whether it's an EV or ICE vehicle fire, once the fire is established, around 80% of the energy that fuels the vehicle fire actually comes from the hundreds of pounds of plastic and other materials in the car body and interior parts. When those materials burn, they can release hydrogen cyanide and carbon monoxide. So it doesn't matter what ignited the fire, battery or gasoline, the toxic plume is deadly. With regards to toxic runoff, that would heavily depend on the specific battery chemistry, such as iron or nickel. Either way, just like the smoke plume, the runoff from any vehicle fire is a toxic soup and best avoided. As the image on screen shows, it comes down to a matter of pick your poison. Moving along, the next concern about EV battery fires is that they may seem random and spontaneous thanks to the fires that have taken place due to recalls. Let's address that by first taking a look at how and where EV fires occur using data from EVs Are Safer. First, between 2010 and 2024, or 14 years of data collected globally, of the 214 vehicle fires that they have investigation reports on, 119 or 56% were due to road accidents. 28 or 13% were due to being submerged in water. 45 or 21% were due to a battery fault during manufacture. And 22 or 10% were due to external fires spreading to the EV. That means 169 of the 214 fires, or 79%, were situations where the battery fire wasn't a randomly occurring fault within the battery. That leaves 45 of the 214, or 21%, being random due to manufacturing faults. How does that compare to ICE vehicles? I couldn't find data that's exactly comparable to the EV FireSafe data, but NFPA, or the National Fire Protection Agency in the United States, shows that only 5% of ICE vehicle fires were due to road accidents. That's as compared to 56% for EVs. Another 16% of ICE vehicle fires were due to arson, fires spreading to the vehicle, or smoking. That leaves 68% of ICE vehicle fires being due to electrical and mechanical failures or malfunctions from triggers like exposed wires and fuel leaks, which occur randomly. Those incidents can be prevented or reduced with maintenance and by driving a newer vehicle. But from a customer perspective, they're as random as a battery igniting due to a manufacturing defect. So when it comes to the unpredictability or randomness of EV fires, in my view, EVs are less likely to burst into flames with seemingly no warning to the customer. 21% of incidents versus 68% of incidents. As a side note, for those that are curious about the impact of charging, EV FireSafe states that 15% of EV fires occurred during charging. However, as they point out, a normally operating EV and electrically compliant charging equipment cannot cause a fire thanks to inbuilt safety checks. That is, as I said earlier, make sure you purchase an EV make or model with a good track record of quality control, and make sure that your charging equipment is installed properly. For example, don't use cheap equipment that can melt and burn the house down. Before we move on, another fear often raised with EV battery packs is vapor cloud explosions, or VCEs. There's 3 things worth noting about VCEs. First, let's not forget the explosive power of gasoline, where hundreds of millions of gallons per day is in transit and risking the lives of anyone nearby. It's just that people have become accustomed to that risk. Yes, lithium-ion battery fires in the home are especially scary, but I'll cover that later in the video. Second, as I covered earlier, every type of fire involves unique risks. It's just a matter of training and education to understand and adapt to those risks. Third, of the 511 vehicle fires worldwide that EV FireSafe gathered data on in the last 14 years, only 22 of them, or 4%, involved a vapor cloud explosion. Or, put another way, of the 40 million electric vehicles on the road today, which doesn't include the ones that were retired from service in the last 14 years, 22 experienced a vapor cloud explosion. That means the odds of a vapor cloud explosion from an EV are almost 1 in 2 million over the course of about 4 years, which is the average age of those 40 million EVs. So we're talking about an extremely rare event. Next, it's worth mentioning overall vehicle safety because not only are EVs safer in terms of fire risks, they also tend to be safer in general. According to the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, for EVs between 2011 and 2019, injury claims related to the drivers and passengers of electric vehicles were more than 40% lower than for internal combustion vehicles. Why is that? Several reasons, but let's look at one of the largest ones. When a vehicle's involved in a head-on collision, the more compressible, energy-absorbing volume it has between the passenger and the object it's colliding with, the less violent the g-forces that the passengers experience. In an internal combustion vehicle, the engine is relatively large. It sits at the front of the vehicle, and it's not compressible. That's as opposed to an EV, where the motors are small, so most of the front of the vehicle is usually trunk space, which provides more crushable volume in a vehicle accident, making it easier to engineer a safer vehicle. That doesn't always guarantee a safer vehicle, but it's why Tesla vehicles have some of the highest safety ratings of any vehicles on the road. As a final note, before we move on to the summary, it's important to point out that concerns about the flammability of lithium-ion batteries are well-founded. Lithium-ion batteries store a lot of energy, and there's always a potential for that energy to be released quickly and catastrophically. However, because lithium-ion batteries are a relatively new energy storage technology compared to fuels like gasoline, people aren't yet fully aware of the exact nature of their risk, and therefore when and how to be cautious with them, which naturally induces anxiety. For example, many people assume that because EVs have such high-capacity battery packs, that those batteries carry the most risk. But counterintuitively, that's actually backwards. The battery packs in EVs are relatively safe. That's because they use sophisticated architectures, electronics, and cooling systems to maximize charging performance and useful battery life, and to meet regulatory requirements for safety. That's as opposed to smaller electronic devices such as e-scooters and e-bikes, which have much less sophisticated battery safety and management controls, are often lower quality, and are poorly regulated. Furthermore, those devices are usually stored inside the home, near people, and surrounded by flammable material. As a result, for the first half of 2023 alone, there were more than 500 fires related to e-scooters and e-bikes, which resulted in 138 injuries and 36 deaths worldwide. That's as compared to EVs for the same 6-month period, which resulted in 44 vehicle fires, 15 injuries, and 4 deaths worldwide. That is, smaller electronics like e-transport devices carry a risk that's more than an order of magnitude greater than EVs, and that doesn't even include fires caused by cell phones, tablets, and watches. In summary, the media and commentators are pumping a fear narrative with EV battery fires to sell clicks, but the reality is that EVs are at least 8 times less likely to catch fire than internal combustion vehicles. That is, it's likely that the media narrative is costing lives rather than saving them. Although EV fires burn hotter, they burn through their fuel more slowly than ICE vehicles do. That means the total energy released in both types of fires is similar, and 80% of that energy actually comes from all the other materials in the vehicle burning. That, in turn, means that EV fires are no more likely to spread to structures and other vehicles than an internal combustion vehicle fire. EV fires are more difficult to put out once ignited, and do carry a larger risk of reignition, but that can be dealt with through relatively cheap tools, procedures, and training. More importantly, the fire progression pattern of EVs means that passengers have a bare minimum of 5 minutes to exit the vehicle before it's engulfed in flames, and in some cases over an hour. Yes, the fumes and runoff from an EV fire are toxic, but they're comparable to internal combustion vehicle fires. Lastly, beyond fire safety, which is just one aspect of vehicle safety, EVs tend to be more crash safe because it's easier to design them with larger crumple zones. That's not to mention the fact that EVs typically have a lower center of gravity, which reduces the chance of rollover, and the fact that they tend to include driver assistance features, which can dramatically reduce your odds of getting into a wreck in the first place. As a final note, the goal of this video isn't to get everyone driving an EV. I'd love it if everyone owned an EV because I own Tesla stock. But the reality is that EVs aren't for everyone. In terms of personal transport, we all have to make decisions based on our own personal needs, risk tolerance, and what we can afford. However, a lot of people just aren't working with accurate information, and they may not be aware that an EV is usually the safest option, not the most dangerous option. I'm hoping this video will help change the narrative to bring that to light. So if it provided value for you, please share this video with friends and family. If you enjoyed this video, please consider supporting the channel by using the links in the description. Also, consider following me on X. I often use X as a testbed for sharing ideas, and X subscribers, like my Patreon supporters, generally get access to my videos a week early. On that note, a special thanks to my YouTube members, X subscribers, and all the other patrons listed in the credits. I appreciate all of your support, and thanks for tuning in.